The conference room floated in space, a massive station built by 12 alien races who called themselves the Galactic Council. Through the wide windows, stars sparkled like diamonds on black cloth. Inside, the air smelled strange to human noses, a mix of chemicals that allowed different species to breathe the same atmosphere. Minho sat alone at the human delegation table. He wore a simple black suit, no medals or decorations. His face remained calm as he watched the council members take their seats. There were creatures of all shapes and sizes. Some walked on 4 legs, others slithered, and a few floated using technology humans didn't fully understand. The council speaker, a tall being covered in smooth blue scales, raised one long arm. The room fell silent. "We gather today to discuss the human problem," the speaker said. His voice came through a translator device, turning alien sounds into words Minho could understand. Minho didn't react. He just waited. "Humanity has expanded too quickly," another council member said. This one looked like a giant insect with 4 eyes that gleamed in the light. His name was Vrixtal, and he commanded the council's military forces. "Your species has claimed 17 systems in just 50 years. You consume resources at alarming rates. You build weapons instead of art. You prepare for war instead of seeking peace." "We seek peace," Minho said quietly. "That's why I'm here." Vrixtal made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "You misunderstand. We are not here to negotiate with you. We are here to tell you what will happen." The blue-scaled speaker nodded. "The council has made a decision. Earth and all human colonies must surrender 40% of all resources to council management. You will allow council observers on every human world. You will reduce your military presence to ceremonial levels, and you will accept council guidance in all matters of expansion and development." Minho took a slow breath. He had expected this. For months, the council had been making demands, testing humanity's responses. Each time, human diplomats had tried to explain that Earth's history was different. Humans knew war too well. They had fought each other for thousands of years before finally uniting. That history shaped everything humans did. But the council didn't care about human history. They saw only a young species that didn't follow the rules. "And if we refuse?" Minho asked. "Then we will enforce these terms," Vrixtal said. He seemed pleased to say it. "Our fleet of 200 warships currently surrounds human space. You have 12 defensive stations and 40 patrol ships. The mathematics are simple." Other council members nodded their various heads. One species communicated through color changes on their skin, and right now those colors pulsed with satisfaction. Another species, who looked like living shadows, darkened with approval. "We have given this ultimatum to 47 species before you," the speaker explained. "All of them saw reason. Some negotiated better terms, some accepted immediately, but all of them understood that the Council exists to maintain peace and order in the galaxy. No species stands alone. No species refuses the Council." Minho stood up slowly. He placed his hands flat on the table and looked at each council member in turn. 47 species accepted because 47 species didn't know what we know." "And what is that?" Vrixtal asked. His mandibles clicked with amusement. "That bullies don't stop when you give them what they want," Minho said. His voice remained calm, almost friendly. "They just ask for more." The room became very quiet. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The concept of refusing wasn't something they encountered often. The speaker's scales darkened slightly. "Ambassador Minho, I urge you to think carefully. Your species is young. You have much to learn about galactic civilization. The Council does not make threats. We make promises. If you do not accept these terms within 7 days, we will implement them by force. Your defensive stations will be disabled. Your patrol ships will be captured. and Earth will be occupied until compliance is achieved. No casualties, of course, another council member added quickly. This one looked almost human, but with golden skin and no hair. We are not barbarians. We will use minimal force. Some damage to infrastructure is unavoidable, but we will compensate you afterward. Once you accept council authority, you will receive the same benefits as all member species. Technology sharing, trade networks, cultural exchange. You will see that this is for the best. Minho picked up his data tablet and tucked it under his arm. I'll deliver your message to my government. 7 days, Vrixtal reminded him. I suggest you spend that time wisely. Prepare your people for the transition. It will be easier if you cooperate. Minho walked toward the exit. The door slid open automatically. He paused and looked back at the assembled council. My government has authorized me to deliver a response immediately, he said. The council members leaned forward with interest. They expected negotiation, perhaps a request for better terms, maybe a plea for more time. Declined, Minho said, permanently. Vrixtal's mandibles stopped clicking. Excuse me? Humanity declines your ultimatum. We will not surrender our resources. We will not accept council observers. We will not reduce our military, and we will not submit to any authority except our own. Minho's voice didn't rise, but something in his tone made several council members uncomfortable. The speaker stood, his scales flushing from blue to deep purple. This is foolishness. You have 7 days to reconsider. We won't need 7 days, Minho said. Our answer won't change. You should have accepted our original proposal for peaceful coexistence. We offered trade, cultural exchange, mutual defense treaties, all as equals. You chose to make demands instead. You cannot stand against the council, Vrixtal shouted. 200 ships. Do you understand what that means? Minho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I understand perfectly. You have 200 ships. Very impressive. I'm sure they look beautiful in formation. This is your final chance, the speaker said. Leave this room, consult with your leaders, and return with acceptance. Otherwise, in 7 days you will understand what it means to defy the Galactic Council. 7 days, Minho repeated. He looked at Vrixtal directly. You might want to spend that time saying goodbye to your fleet. He left before anyone could respond. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. In the conference room, the council members sat in stunned silence. Finally, one of them spoke. Did he just threaten us? Vrixtal made a grinding sound with his mandibles. Impossible. They have nothing. 12 stations, 40 ships. This is desperation. Nothing more. But as Minho's shuttle departed from the station, something happened deep in human space. In classified shipyards hidden beneath Luna's surface, power began flowing to systems that had been dormant for years. Lights flickered on in corridors no one had walked in decades. Computer systems awakened from long sleep. And in the center of the largest shipyard humanity had ever built, something massive began to stir. The countdown had started. 7 days until the council learned what humans built when they remembered their history. 7 days until they discovered that the kindest humans could be when they offered peace as equals. 7 days until they met the Reaper's Gate. The meeting room inside Luna Base had no windows. It sat 3 kilometers below the moon's surface, surrounded by solid rock and enough armor to survive a direct nuclear strike. The air recyclers hummed quietly in the background. 12 officers sat around a long metal table, their faces lit by the glow of holographic displays. Fleet Admiral Ji-hoon stood at the head of the table. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many budget meetings and not enough sleep. He wore his uniform without decoration except for a single silver star on his collar. The council rejected our diplomatic solution, Ji-hoon said. His voice was flat, matter-of-fact. Ambassador Minho delivered our refusal to their ultimatum 6 hours ago. This means we have approximately 6 days and 18 hours before their fleet moves against our defensive positions. A younger officer raised her hand. Sir, our defensive stations can hold for maybe 3 days against that kind of firepower. After that, it won't matter, Jihoon interrupted, because we're not using the defensive stations as our primary response. He touched a control on the table. The lights dimmed. A holographic image appeared in the air above them, a technical schematic of something enormous. The officers leaned forward, squinting at the details. "What am I looking at?" someone asked. "Project Nightfall," Jihoon said. "Authorized 15 years ago under the Colonial Defense Act, built in secret using funds from classified military budgets, completed 3 years ago and kept in standby mode ever since." An officer stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. This was Commander Soyan, chief engineer of the Luna shipyards. She had dark circles under her eyes and grease stains on her uniform sleeves. "Sir, with respect, I need to explain what this is before you authorize its use." Jihoon nodded. "Go ahead." Soyan took a breath. When humanity unified and moved into space, our leaders faced a question. How do we defend ourselves in a galaxy full of unknown species? Some politicians wanted to build many small ships, like a traditional fleet. Others wanted defensive stations. But a small group, a very paranoid, very careful group, asked a different question. She manipulated the hologram, making it rotate. The schematic showed a vessel that looked less like a ship and more like a flying fortress. They asked, what if we built something that could win a war by itself? What if we created a weapon so powerful that no one would dare attack us? "That's insane," an intelligence officer muttered. "Yes," Soyan agreed. "Completely insane, and that's what makes it human." She expanded the schematic, showing cross-sections. The HDMS Reaper's Gate is 15 kilometers long. For comparison, our largest standard warship is 1 kilometer. This thing is bigger than most space stations. She highlighted different sections as she spoke. It's powered by controlled antimatter reactions, plural. It has 6 separate reactor cores, each capable of powering an entire colony. The hull is layered composite armor designed to absorb and disperse energy weapons. And the weapons themselves... She paused. "The weapons are why I have nightmares." Another officer, Lieutenant Hyun, spoke up. He was a quiet man who rarely said anything in meetings. "What kind of weapons?" Soyan looked at him. "The kind that would get us arrested if the Council knew we had them. Relativistic projectile cannons that accelerate solid metal to near light speed. Each projectile hits with the force of a nuclear bomb. Quantum-entangled missiles that lock onto targets and cannot be fooled by countermeasures. EMP generators powerful enough to disable ships across thousands of kilometers. And point defense systems with reaction times measured in microseconds." The room was silent. Finally, someone asked, "How many crew does it need?" "Full combat efficiency requires 300 personnel," Soyan said. "But it can operate with as few as 50. Most systems are automated. The AI assists with targeting, navigation, and threat assessment, but all weapon authorization requires human approval. We didn't want to build something that could go rogue." Jihoon cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Hyun, you'll command it." Everyone turned to look at Hyun. He blinked slowly, his face showing no emotion. "Sir, you scored highest on tactical simulations. You have combat experience from the border skirmishes, and according to your psychological profile, you can make difficult decisions without hesitation." Jihoon's eyes were hard. "This mission will require difficult decisions." Hyun stood and saluted. "I understand, sir." An intelligence officer named Unji activated her own display. "Admiral, I need to provide context about our enemy. The Council species have been at peace for over 2,000 years. Their military exists mainly for patrol duty and disaster response. They have weapons, but they've never used them in actual war." "Never?" someone asked. "Never," Yunji confirmed. The last major conflict in Council space was before most of their current governments existed. Their ships are designed for intimidation and deterrence, not combat. Their crews train through simulations that assume surrender after minimal resistance. They have no doctrine for sustained warfare. She pulled up psychological profiles. Their military commanders view combat as a last resort and expect negotiations at every stage. Commander Vrixtal, who leads their fleet, has never personally fired a weapon in anger. His experience comes from managing peacekeeping operations and resolving disputes through presence and threat of force. So they're overconfident, Ji-hoon said. Extremely, Yoon-ji agreed. They assume their numerical advantage is decisive. They assume we'll fight defensively, and they assume we follow the same rules of engagement they do. Minimal casualties, surgical strikes, measured responses. Ji-hoon looked around the table. We need to be clear about what we're authorizing here. The Reaper's Gate is not designed for surgical strikes. It's designed for overwhelming victory. If we deploy it, there will be casualties. Significant casualties. They're bringing 200 ships to subjugate Earth, someone said. They made their choice. I know, Ji-hoon said quietly. But I want everyone in this room to understand what we're doing. We're not defending. We're not deterring. We're sending a message written in debris and wreckage. We're making sure that no species ever threatens humanity again. Soyeon spoke up. Sir, there's another problem. The Reaper's Gate needs 4 days to fully activate from cold standby. The antimatter reactors have to be brought online carefully. Weapon systems need calibration. The AI needs to run diagnostics. We can't rush it without risking catastrophic failure. 4 days, Ji-hoon calculated. That leaves us approximately 3 days after activation before the Council's deadline. Assuming they wait for the deadline, Yoon-ji said, they might move early if they detect unusual activity. Then we hide it, Ji-hoon decided. The Reaper's Gate stays in the shipyard under full stealth protocols until activation is complete. We maintain normal defensive postures. Let them think we're scrambling to negotiate or preparing a conventional defense. He looked at Hyun. Captain, you have 4 days to select your crew and familiarize yourself with the ship's systems. Commander Soyeon will assist with technical briefings. On day 5, you will take the Reaper's Gate to the border of human space and wait. Wait for what, sir? Hyun asked. For them to make a mistake, Ji-hoon said. For them to fire first. I want clear justification for what happens next. We're not aggressors. We're defenders who happen to have a very big stick. An officer raised a concern. Sir, what if they surrender immediately when they see the Reaper's Gate? What if they retreat? Ji-hoon considered this. Then we let them go. We're not monsters. If they back down, we accept it. But, he paused. I don't think they will. They're overconfident. They believe their numbers are decisive, and they've never seen anything like what we built. Soyeon pulled up an image of the Reaper's Gate in full combat configuration, weapons deployed, engines glowing. It looked like something from a nightmare. All sharp edges and dark armor bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Sir, she said softly, when this ship activates, every sensor in human space will detect it. The energy signature alone will be visible across multiple star systems. There's no way to hide what it is. Good, Ji-hoon said. I want the Council to see it. I want them to have time to think about their choices. I want them to understand what's coming. He stood up. This meeting is classified at the highest level. You will not discuss this with anyone outside this room. You will not transmit any details through standard communication channels, and you will tell your families that you'll be working late for the next week. The officers stood and saluted. As they filed out, Ji-hoon called out to Hyun. Captain, a moment. Hyun waited until the room was empty. Ji-hoon looked at him for a long moment. You understand what I'm asking you to do? Yes, sir, Hyun said. You're asking me to destroy a fleet. I'm asking you to save humanity, Ji-hoon corrected. The Council thinks we're weak. They think we'll surrender like the other 47 species did. We need to teach them that humans are different, that we remember our history, that we built weapons like the Reaper's Gate, because we know what happens when you're not strong enough to defend yourself. Hyun nodded slowly. I won't fail, sir. I know you won't, Jahoon said. That's why I chose you. Deep in the shipyards, power began flowing to the Reaper's Gate. In 4 days, it would wake up, and the galaxy would learn what humans built in the dark. Day 7 arrived like any other day in space, silent, cold, and indifferent to the affairs of living beings. At the border of human space, 200 Council warships floated in perfect formation. They looked beautiful, almost artistic. Each ship gleamed with polished metal and elegant design. Lights blinked across their hulls in patterns that signaled power and authority. Commander Vrixtal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Celestial Dawn. He felt satisfied. Everything was going according to plan. His sensors showed human defensive stations on full alert, but no sign of a fleet response. The humans were scrambling, confused, probably arguing among themselves about whether to surrender. Status report, Vrixtal commanded. His tactical officer, a being with 6 tentacles and 1 large eye, consulted her displays. All ships report ready status. Human defensive stations are active but not targeting us. We detect normal communications traffic from Earth. No signs of military mobilization beyond standard defensive postures. They're preparing to surrender, another officer said. It's the pattern we always see. Defiance at first, then acceptance when they realize resistance is futile. Vrixtal clicked his mandibles in approval. Open a channel to Earth. Let's give them one final chance to accept terms peacefully. Before the communication could be sent, every sensor on every Council ship suddenly screamed warnings. Tactical displays lit up with red alerts. Officers across the fleet scrambled to understand what was happening. Spatial distortion detected, the tactical officer shouted. Massive energy signature emerging at coordinates. Space itself seemed to tear open. Reality folded like paper, and through the fold came something that made the Council fleet look like toys. The HDMS Reaper's Gate dropped into normal space with a sound that everyone felt in their bones, even though sound shouldn't travel in vacuum. It was black. Not just dark, but black like the space between stars. Like the death of light itself. 15 kilometers of angular armor and weapons that looked like they were designed by something that hated beauty. Where Council ships had smooth curves and artistic designs, the Reaper's Gate had sharp edges and brutal efficiency. On the bridge of the Reaper's Gate, Captain Hyun sat in the command chair and watched his displays calmly. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. There was no panic. No excitement, just professionals doing their jobs. All systems green, reported Chief Engineer Soyeon from her station. Reactors at full power. Weapons charged and ready. Point defense online. We're ready for combat operations. Lieutenant Doyen, the young tactical officer, stared at his screens with wide eyes. Sir, I'm reading 200 contacts. They're just sitting there. Not moving. I think we surprised them. Of course we did, Hyun said. His voice was calm, almost bored. They expected a conventional defense. They got us instead. Weapons Officer Ji-won looked up from her console. Sir, 3 ships are breaking formation. They're moving to intercept us. I think they're going to try something. Hyun nodded. Open a channel, all Council ships. The communication system connected. Hyun took a breath and spoke clearly. This is Captain Hyun of the human defense military ship Reaper's Gate. You were warned. You have 30 seconds to retreat beyond human borders. This is your only chance. On the Celestial Dawn, Vrixtal stared at the image of the massive human ship. His mandibles trembled slightly. Something deep in his genetic memory, Some instinct from when his species were prey, animals millions of years ago, told him to run. But he was commander of the Council fleet. He had 200 ships. Pride and duty fought against instinct. "One ship," Vrixtal said, though his voice wasn't as confident as before. "They send one ship against our entire fleet. This is either madness or a bluff." His tactical officer's tentacles quivered. "Sir, the energy readings from that vessel they're impossible. No ship should generate that much power. Our sensors think it's a small star." "It's a bluff," Vrixtal insisted. "They built something big to scare us. Probably half those weapons don't even work. Send the cruisers, Morning Light, Peaceful Sky, and Gentle Wind to disable their engines. Use minimum force. We'll capture it intact and show the galaxy what happens when you try to intimidate the Council." The 3 cruisers accelerated toward the Reaper's Gate. They were beautiful ships, each crewed by 200 beings who believed they were performing a police action against an irrational species. On the Reaper's Gate, Doyen counted down. 20 seconds, sir. 15, 10, 5. "Weapons Officer Jiwan," Hyun said quietly. "You may fire when ready." Jiwan had been preparing for this moment for 4 days. She had run simulations. She had calibrated targeting systems. She had made peace with what she was about to do. Her finger pressed the authorization button. The Reaper's Gate opened fire. The relativistic cannons spoke first. Solid metal projectiles accelerated to 98% of light speed. They crossed the distance to the 3 cruisers in less than a second. When they hit, the cruisers didn't explode. They simply stopped being ships and became expanding clouds of plasma and debris. 3 targets destroyed, Jiwan reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. Continuing engagement. The Council fleet finally reacted. Ships began moving, some trying to flee, others trying to form defensive positions. It didn't matter. The Reaper's Gate had been designed to fight entire fleets alone. Quantum-entangled missiles launched from hidden bays. Each missile locked onto a target using technology that ignored countermeasures and deception. Once locked, they couldn't miss. They simply appeared at their targets and detonated, each carrying enough explosive power to break a ship in half. The EMP generators fired in pulses that cascaded through the Council formation. Ships that were trying to activate their weapons suddenly went dark as their systems overloaded. Some managed to reboot their computers. Those ships became priority targets. The point defense systems tracked incoming fire from the few Council ships that managed to shoot back. Lasers intercepted missiles while they were still kilometers away. Projectiles were destroyed before they could get close. The Reaper's Gate's armor shrugged off the few hits that got through. Council weapons were designed to disable, not destroy, and they barely scratched the dark armor. Doyen monitored the tactical display, watching red icons disappear from his screen. "Sir, enemy flagship is trying to retreat. Their engines are at maximum power." "Disable them," Hyun ordered. A single shot from a railgun, moving at relativistic speed, struck the Celestial Dawn's engine section. The engines didn't explode. They simply stopped working. The flagship drifted, powerless, while escape pods began launching from its hull. "Sir," Doyen said, his voice tight, "we're receiving surrender signals from multiple ships. They're dropping shields and requesting mercy." Hyun looked at the timer on his display. 27 minutes had passed since the first shot. 200 ships had become scattered debris and disabled hulls floating in space. Some were still functional but had surrendered. 2 ships at the far edge of the formation had turned and fled at maximum speed the moment the shooting started. "Cease fire," Hyun ordered. "Target only ships that continue hostile action." The bridge became quiet. The Reaper's Gate floated among the wreckage, weapons still hot, reactors humming with power. Around it, the remains of the Council fleet drifted like broken toys. Jiwan stared at her console. "Confirmed casualties." estimated at 15,000 Council personnel. Another 8,000 aboard disabled ships. 2 ships escaped. The rest... She trailed off. Document everything, Hyun said. I want full records of all engagement protocols. Timestamps for our warning, timestamps for their hostile action, timestamps for our response. Intelligence will need this data. Soyeon spoke from her engineering station. Sir, all systems performed within expected parameters. Minor stress on Reactor 3, but nothing critical. We can maintain this position indefinitely. Hyun opened a communication channel, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Captain Hyun to all Council vessels. Surrender is accepted. Do not attempt to restart your engines or weapons. Rescue operations will begin shortly. Any ship that takes hostile action will be destroyed without warning. He closed the channel and sat back in his chair. Around him, his crew worked quietly, professional despite what they had just done. Doyeon looked pale. Jiwon's hands still trembled slightly, but they did their jobs. Sir, Doyeon said after a moment, the 2 ships that escaped, they're heading directly back to Council space at maximum speed. Good, Hyun said. Let them go. Sir? They need to tell the Council what happened here, Hyun explained. They need to describe what they saw. Numbers in a report won't be enough. The Council needs to hear from survivors who watched their fleet dissolve in 30 minutes. He stood and walked to the main viewport. Outside, human rescue ships were already arriving, responding to emergency beacons from disabled Council vessels. The Reaper's Gate had been designed to destroy fleets. Humanity had designed everything else to save lives. Record a message, Hyun told his communication officer. Send it to Ambassador Minho. The officer nodded, ready to record. Hyun looked at the wreckage floating in space and spoke clearly. Ambassador Minho, this is Captain Hyun. The Council fleet engaged human defensive forces at the border of our space. We responded according to our rules of engagement. The threat has been neutralized. Human space remains secure. We are beginning rescue operations for Council survivors. He paused, then added, Sir, you were right. They didn't think we would actually fight. They thought our warnings were negotiations. They learned otherwise. The message was sent. The Reaper's Gate remained on station, a dark monument to human preparation and the price of threatening Earth. In 30 minutes, it had changed the galaxy's understanding of humanity. And somewhere in Council space, 2 ships raced home, carrying news that would shake every government in the known galaxy. The humans weren't negotiating. The humans had never been negotiating. The humans had been warning them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began in chaos. Representatives from 12 species crowded into the chamber, all talking at once. Some shouted, some made clicking sounds, and others communicated through color flashes on their skin. The normal order and dignity of the Council had collapsed. The blue-scaled speaker tried to restore calm, but no one listened. Finally, he activated the chamber's attention system, a harmless but annoying sound that made everyone stop talking. Order, the speaker commanded. We will have order, or this session is meaningless. The representatives slowly quieted down. They found their seats. The chamber's lights dimmed, and a holographic display activated in the center of the room. 7 days ago, the speaker said, his voice heavy with something that might have been shame. We issued an ultimatum to humanity. We sent 200 ships to enforce our demands. Today we have received reports from the 2 surviving vessels of that fleet. A murmur ran through the chamber. 2 surviving vessels, out of 200. Before we review the battle recordings, the speaker continued, I want to remind everyone that what we are about to see represents our greatest military defeat in over 2,000 years. I ask for calm and rational analysis, not panic. The holographic display activated, showing the view from the bridge of one of the escaping Council ships. The representatives watched in silence as space tore open and the Reaper's Gate emerged. They saw its massive black hull bristling with weapons. They heard Captain Hyun's warning, and then they watched as the human ship destroyed the Council fleet in 30 minutes. When the recording ended, the chamber was absolutely silent. Several representatives had turned colors that indicated distress. Others had stopped moving entirely, frozen in shock. Commander Vrixtal entered the chamber. He looked different than before, smaller somehow, despite being the same size. He walked slowly to a testimony stand, and when he spoke, his mandibles barely moved. "I commanded that fleet," he said. "I made the decision to send 3 cruisers to disable the human ship. That decision cost 600 lives in the first 5 seconds of combat." He paused. "I watched the morning light, peaceful sky, and gentle wind simply cease to exist, not destroyed, not damaged. They just stopped being ships and became light and heat." A representative from a species that looked like living shadows spoke up. "Commander, your report says the human ship used relativistic weapons traveling near the speed of light. Such weapons are banned by 17 different council treaties." "We never signed those treaties," a voice said from the entrance. Everyone turned. Ambassador Minho walked into the chamber, accompanied by 2 human guards. He looked tired, but walked with confidence. He took his place at the human delegation table and waited. The speaker's scales flushed dark purple. "Ambassador, you were not summoned to this session." "You're discussing my species," Minho replied calmly. "I have a right to be present." "You have no rights here," a representative shouted. "You destroyed our fleet. You killed thousands of our people." Minho stood up slowly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but somehow filled the entire chamber. "Your fleet came to invade our space. Your commander gave us 30 seconds to surrender our sovereignty. We gave them 30 seconds to leave. They chose to attack. We chose to defend ourselves." "With weapons of mass destruction," another representative accused. "With weapons we built specifically because we knew someone would eventually threaten us," Minho corrected. "You asked earlier why humanity possesses such weapons. The answer is simple. We remember our history." He activated his own holographic display. It showed Earth's history, thousands of years of warfare, weapons development, and hard-learned lessons about survival. "We were not always united," Minho explained. "For most of our history, humans fought humans. We built terrible weapons and used them on each other. We learned what happens when you're not strong enough to defend yourself. We learned what happens when you trust bullies to keep their promises." A representative tried to interrupt, but Minho continued. "When we finally unified and went to space, we had a choice. We could be weak and hope for kindness, or we could be strong and ensure our safety. We chose strength. We built weapons that we hoped we would never use. And then you gave us a reason to use them." "You could have negotiated," someone shouted. "We tried," Minho said flatly. "We offered trade agreements, technology sharing, cultural exchange, mutual defense. We offered everything the Council supposedly values. You responded with demands and ultimatums. You surrounded our space with warships. You gave us 7 days to surrender or face invasion." He looked around the chamber. "What did you expect us to do? Submit? Become the 48th species to accept Council authority? Did you really think we would just give up our freedom because you asked nicely with guns pointed at our heads?" The speaker tried to regain control of the session. "The Council has always sought peaceful integration of new species. Our methods have worked for species that had no choice," Minho interrupted. "You've been so successful because everyone you encountered was weaker than you. Well, congratulations. You finally found someone who wasn't." Commander Vrixtal spoke again, his voice hollow. "Ambassador, I need to ask. The Reaper's Gate. Is it your only ship of that class?" Minho looked at him for a long moment. The entire chamber waited for his answer. This was the critical question. If humanity had only one such ship, The Council could plan around it, wait it out, find a counter-strategy. But if there were more, Navigation Officer Tai Young, who had accompanied Minho to the session, activated another display. It showed 12 energy signatures similar to the Reaper's Gate, scattered throughout human space, each one registered as powerfully as the ship that had destroyed the Council fleet. 12 more? A representative whispered. Taeyong's expression revealed nothing. The truth was that only 3 such ships existed, the Reaper's Gate, and 2 others still in final construction. But the Council didn't need to know that. The sensors detected power signatures that could be anything. Hidden shipyards, weapons platforms, or ships like the Reaper's Gate, waiting in silence. "You built 13 of those ant things?" Vrixtal asked. "We built what we needed to ensure our survival," Minho replied, not confirming or denying the number. A medical officer named Ara entered the chamber, moving quickly to the testimony stand. She was a gentle species, known for their healing abilities and compassion. When she spoke, her voice trembled. "I have been treating survivors from the battle," she said. "Commander Vrixtal has physical injuries, but they will heal. The real damage is psychological. I have examined 200 survivors. All of them show signs of trauma. They cannot sleep. They cannot eat. They shake when they see recordings of the battle." She looked directly at Minho. "They keep saying the same thing. They say the human ship was waiting for them, like a predator watching prey. They say it didn't feel like a battle. It felt like an execution." "Because it was," Minho said without apology. "You sent a fleet to subjugate my species. We sent a response that would ensure you never tried again. Commander Vrixtal and his fleet are alive because we chose to let them live. We could have destroyed every ship. We could have left no survivors, but we're not monsters. We're just not victims." The Council's diplomatic lead, a being who had negotiated peace treaties for 300 years, finally spoke. "Ambassador Minho, what does humanity want?" "What we wanted from the beginning," Minho said. "Peace, trade, friendship, but as equals, not as subjects. We will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not accept Council oversight. We will not reduce our military to levels you find acceptable." "Then what are we supposed to do?" the diplomatic lead asked. "How can we coexist if you refuse to follow any Council rules? You start by understanding that your rules were written by species that never needed to fight for survival," Minho said. "You banned relativistic weapons because you thought they were too dangerous. We keep them because we know what's more dangerous: being helpless when someone decides you don't deserve to exist." He pulled up a document on his display. "Here are humanity's terms for peace. We will establish a demilitarized zone around human space, enforced by human forces. Any Council ship that enters this zone without permission will be warned once, then fired upon. We will engage in trade and cultural exchange on equal terms. We will not join the Council as a subordinate member, but we're willing to establish diplomatic relations as an independent power." "This is unacceptable," a representative shouted. "The Council has maintained order for millennia. We cannot allow one species to dictate terms." "You can't?" Minho asked. "Then try to enforce your will. Send another fleet. See what happens. We'll be waiting." The chamber erupted in argument again. Species shouted at each other, blame was thrown around, and several representatives called for military retaliation. Commander Minseo, who had taken over military coordination after Vrixtal's injury, stood up. She was a logical species, known for mathematical precision and strategic thinking. When she spoke, everyone listened. "I have analyzed the battle data," she said. "I have run simulations using our best military AI. The conclusion is clear. If we send another fleet, the result will be the same. Perhaps we would destroy the Reaper's Gate eventually, but the cost would be tens of thousands of lives and hundreds of ships, and that assumes they only have one such vessel." She looked at the representatives. The simple truth is that humanity prepared for total war while we prepared for diplomacy. They built weapons we would never consider. They designed tactics around overwhelming force. And they did it all while we weren't paying attention because we assumed everyone would be like us. So we just accept their terms? Someone asked bitterly. Yes, Minseo said, because the alternative is a war we cannot win. Not without losses that would destabilize the entire council. The mathematics are brutal but clear. The speaker looked at Minho. His scales had faded to a pale blue. These terms you propose, they are final? They are generous, Minho corrected. And they are what we offered before you sent your fleet. The only addition is the demilitarized zone. Consider it a reminder, a buffer between our two civilizations until you learn to see us as equals instead of problems to be solved. The vote was called. One by one, the council species voted to accept humanity's terms. Some voted quickly, eager to end the crisis. Others voted reluctantly, angry but pragmatic. In the end, the result was unanimous. Humanity would remain independent. The galaxy had a new power, one that had announced itself with violence and offered peace from a position of strength. As Minho left the chamber, he passed Commander Vrixtal. The commander looked at him with his 4 eyes. Why? Vrixtal asked quietly. Why let us survive? You could have killed everyone. Minho paused. Because we're not trying to conquer the galaxy. We just want to be left alone. And because maybe someday, you'll understand that the strongest thing we did wasn't destroying your fleet. It was stopping when we could have kept going. He left Vrixtal standing there, thinking about the human who had just taught the galaxy a lesson in both power and restraint. 1 year had passed since the Battle of the Border, as historians were calling it now. The galaxy had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. Some changes were visible on sensors and star charts. Others lived in the hearts and minds of beings across hundreds of worlds. The HDMS Reaper's Gate floated at the edge of human space, exactly where it had won the battle. Captain Hyun had kept the ship on patrol duty there, a silent reminder to anyone who looked. The massive black vessel had become a landmark, something that appeared on navigation charts with a simple warning. Human defense perimeter. No unauthorized entry. Hyun sat in his command chair, reviewing reports. His hair had more gray now, though he was not an old man. Command of the galaxy's most feared warship had aged him in ways that time alone could not. Around him, his crew performed their duties with the quiet efficiency that had become their trademark. Sir, Lieutenant Doyen reported from his tactical station, we have a scheduled diplomatic vessel approaching. Council Ambassador Ship Harmony's Promise. They're transmitting proper authorization codes. Confirm and grant passage, Hyun ordered. This was routine now. The demilitarized zone that humanity enforced allowed diplomatic traffic, trade ships, and scientific vessels. Only military craft were forbidden without explicit permission. Doyen worked his console, then paused. Sir, there's a second contact. Small private vessel, council registry. Also transmitting authorization codes. He looked up. It's requesting permission to approach the Reaper's Gate. That was unusual. Most ships avoided getting close to the human warship. Its reputation made even friendly vessels nervous. Identify the vessel and occupants, Hyun said. Single occupant, Commander Vrixtal of the Council Military, Doyun read. His message says, he wants to speak with you personally, sir. Hyun considered this. Vrixtal had recovered from his physical injuries months ago, though reports suggested the psychological wounds remained. The former fleet commander had resigned from his position and now worked as an advisor on human-alien relations. Grant him permission to dock, Hyun decided. Inform Commander Soyeon to meet me at the airlock. 20 minutes later, Hyun stood in the docking bay as Vrixtal's small ship connected. The airlock hissed open, and the insectoid commander stepped through. He looked older somehow, though Hyun wasn't sure how aging worked for his species. His mandibles moved slowly, and his 4 eyes seemed dimmer than before. "Captain Hyun," Vrixtal said through his translator, "thank you for seeing me." "Commander," Hyun replied with a nod. "What brings you here?" "Curiosity," Vrixtal said, "and perhaps a need for understanding. For a year, I have lived with the memory of what happened here. I have analyzed the battle from every angle. I have studied human military history. And I still do not understand how your species thinks." Hyun gestured toward a corridor. "Walk with me." They moved through the ship's passages. Vrixtal's eyes took in everything: the functional design, the lack of decoration, the efficiency of every system. Crew members passed them, nodding respectfully to their captain and eyeing the alien visitor with curiosity. "Your ship is very different from ours," Vrixtal observed. "Council vessels have artwork, gardens, spaces for meditation and recreation. Your ship is all purpose and function." "It's a warship," Hyun said simply, "not a cruise liner. But your crew lives here for months at a time. Do they not need beauty? Comfort?" Hyun stopped at a window overlooking space. "They need to know their ship will protect them and complete its mission. Everything else is secondary." He looked at Vrixtal. "Is that what you came to understand, our design philosophy?" "No," Vrixtal said. "I came to understand why you stopped." Hyun raised an eyebrow. "Stopped? At the battle. Your ship could have destroyed every council vessel, but after 30 minutes, you stopped shooting. You accepted surrenders. You began rescue operations." Vrixtal's mandibles trembled slightly. "My species analyzes threats in terms of capability and intent. Your capability was clear, but your intent, I have spent a year trying to understand it." Hyun looked out at the stars. "We stopped because the threat was neutralized. We're not interested in killing for its own sake. We just wanted you to leave us alone." "But you built this ship," Vrixtal gestured around them, "and others like it, if reports are true. You created weapons of overwhelming force. Why build such things if not to use them?" "To never have to use them again," Hyun said. "You've studied our history. You know humans fought each other for thousands of years. We learned that the only thing worse than being strong enough to deter war is being too weak to prevent it." They continued walking. Hyun led Vrixtal to the observation deck, a small room where off-duty crew could look at space. It was one of the few areas on the ship that served no direct tactical purpose. "Even here," Vrixtal said, looking around, "you allow your crew some comfort, some beauty." "We're not machines," Hyun replied. "We understand that people need more than duty. But the ship's primary purpose is defense. Everything supports that." Vrixtal was quiet for a moment. "Captain, I need to tell you something. The Council has detected activity at the edge of the galaxy, an unknown species expanding aggressively. They have attacked 3 unaligned worlds in the past month. The Council is concerned. And they want humanity's help," Hyun guessed. "They want to know if you will help," Vrixtal corrected. "Ambassador Minho will receive an official request. But I wanted to ask you directly, as one military officer to another. If the Council faces an external threat, will humanity stand with us?" Hyun considered this carefully. A year ago, the answer would have been no. The Council tried to conquer us. Why would we help you? "And now?" Vrixtal asked. "Now, I think we share this galaxy. And maybe it's time we started acting like it." Hyun looked at the insectoid commander. "But not as your subordinates, as equals who choose to defend common interests." Vrixtal's mandibles moved in what his species considered a smile. "I will report this to the Council. Thank you, Captain." On Earth, in the United Nations building that served as humanity's central government, Ambassador Minho attended a very different meeting. The room was filled with representatives from both human colonies and Council species. A year ago, this would have been unthinkable. Now it was routine. The subject was trade agreements, technology sharing, and cultural exchange programs. Boring, technical work that was slowly building bridges between civilizations. Minho found this work more satisfying than his dramatic confrontation with the council. This was how real peace was built, one boring meeting at a time. During a break, a young council diplomat approached him. She was from a species that looked almost human, with silver skin and large eyes. "Ambassador Minho, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do humans name their warships such frightening names? The Reaper's Gate. It sounds like something from nightmare mythology." Minho smiled. "Because we want people to understand what they are. The Reaper's Gate is not a diplomatic vessel or a scientific ship. It's a weapon. We name it honestly, so there's no confusion about its purpose." "But you are negotiating peace," the young diplomat said. "You participate in trade discussions and cultural exchanges. You seem to want friendship with the galaxy." "We do," Minho confirmed. "But friendship built on mutual respect is stronger than friendship built on fear or dependency. The Council respects us now because they understand our strength. That respect makes genuine friendship possible." "I think I understand," she said slowly. "You show your weapons openly so that everyone knows peace is a choice, not a necessity." "Exactly," Minho said. "And when both sides choose peace from a position of strength, that peace lasts." In Luna Base, deep below the surface, Engineer Commander Soyan oversaw a very different kind of project. Instead of building weapons, her team was carefully decommissioning some of humanity's more extreme military developments. The galaxy knew about ships like the Reaper's Gate. There was no need for everything else humanity had built in paranoid isolation. "How's the dismantlement proceeding?" Admiral Jihoon asked, visiting her workshop. "Slowly," Soyan replied, wiping grease from her hands. "Some of this technology is too dangerous to exist. Other parts might have peaceful applications. We're being careful." Jihoon nodded. "Good. We proved our point. Now we need to show we can be trusted with power." "Sir," Soyan said hesitantly, "there's something else. The Council has shared some of their technology with us as part of the peace agreements. Their medical systems are centuries ahead of ours. Their energy generation is more efficient. If we combine their science with our engineering, we could build better ships," Jihoon finished. "Better stations, better everything." "Yes, sir." "Then do it," Jihoon decided. "But remember, we build to defend, not to conquer. That distinction matters." In a training facility orbiting Mars, Lieutenant Doyen stood in a simulator with an unexpected partner. Thresh was a young council pilot, part of an exchange program that sent officers between human and council forces. He was from the same species as Vrixtail, though younger and less experienced. "Again?" Thresh asked, his mandibles clicking with frustration. They had been running combat simulations for hours, and Thresh kept losing. "Again," Doyen confirmed. "You're thinking too defensively. Council doctrine teaches you to minimize casualties and preserve ships. That's fine for peacekeeping, but in real combat, hesitation gets you killed." They ran the simulation again. This time, Thresh tried a more aggressive approach. His simulated ship took damage, but he managed to complete the objective. "Better," Doyen said. "You're learning." "Your tactics are brutal," Thresh observed. "They're effective," Doyen corrected. "But you don't have to fight like us. You just need to understand how we think. That way, if we ever have to fight together, we won't get in each other's way." "You think we will fight together?" Thresh asked. "The galaxy is big," Doyen said. "There's room for a lot of different threats. Eventually, yes, I think we'll end up on the same side." "That is reassuring," Thresh said. "A year ago, I feared humans. Now I train with one. The galaxy changes quickly." "Not the galaxy," Doyen said. "Just our understanding of each other." On the bridge of the Reaper's Gate, Captain Hyun received a priority message from Admiral Jehoon. He read it carefully, then called his senior staff to the briefing room. "We've been monitoring the situation at the galaxy's edge," Hyun told them. "The unknown species that's been attacking unaligned worlds. Long-range sensors have identified them as extremely hostile and technologically advanced. The Council has requested our assistance in establishing a defensive perimeter." Weapons Officer Jiwon looked concerned. "Sir, are we really going to help them? After everything that happened?" "Yes," Hyun said firmly, "because this isn't about the Council anymore. It's about protecting inhabited worlds from an aggressive threat. That's what we built this ship for." "To protect," Chief Engineer Soyeon said quietly. "To protect," Hyun agreed. "It just took us a year to remember that protecting humanity doesn't mean ignoring everyone else." He activated a star chart showing the galaxy's edge. "We'll coordinate with Council forces, not as their subordinates but as equals facing a common problem. This will be the first real test of whether humans and Council species can work together." Lieutenant Doyen studied the chart. "Sir, if this unknown species is as dangerous as reports suggest, we might need more than just the Reaper's Gate." "I know," Hyun said. "That's why Admiral Jehoon is authorizing the deployment of all 3 Nightfall-class vessels. The Reaper's Gate, Eternal Vigil, and Final Horizon will form a defensive line along with Council forces." The room was quiet as everyone absorbed this. 3 of humanity's most powerful warships, working alongside former enemies to defend worlds they had never seen. "This feels strange," Jiwon said. "A year ago, we were ready to fight the entire Council. Now we're protecting them." "We're not protecting the Council," Hyun corrected gently. "We're protecting the principle that aggressive species don't get to conquer whoever they want. That's a principle worth defending, even if it means working with former enemies." The orders were transmitted. Within days, human and Council ships would begin coordinating for a joint defensive operation. It would be messy, complicated, and full of misunderstandings. But it would also be something new, genuine cooperation between civilizations that had learned to respect each other's strength. Ambassador Minho stood at a window in his office, looking at Earth below. Behind him, his assistant reviewed the day's schedule. More meetings, more negotiations, more slow progress toward a stable peace. "Sir," his assistant asked, "do you think it will work? Humans and the Council working together?" "I don't know," Minho admitted. "But I know we have to try. The galaxy is big enough for different kinds of civilizations. Maybe we can show everyone that strength and cooperation aren't opposites. Maybe we can prove that the species who builds the best weapons can also build the best peace." In orbit, the Reaper's Gate began preparations for deployment. Its massive engines glowed with power, ready to carry humanity's strength across the galaxy. Not to conquer, but to defend. Not to threaten, but to protect. The galaxy had learned what humans built in darkness and fear. Now it would learn what humans built with hope and partnership. And perhaps that would be the most impressive creation of all. Captain Hyun sat in his command chair and gave the order. "Helm, set course for the galactic edge. Maximum speed." The Reaper's Gate moved, carrying with it a message, written not in weapons, but in actions. Humanity had taught the galaxy a harsh lesson about underestimating strangers. Now they would teach a second lesson, that the strongest warriors make the best protectors, and that true strength includes knowing when to extend a hand instead of a fist. The stars waited ahead, full of unknown dangers and unexpected friendships. And humanity, once alone and defensive, moved forward as part of something larger. A galaxy slowly learning that diversity included different kinds of strength and that peace required both the courage to fight and the wisdom to stop.